Gurmagad Cahirlock, and thank you, Minister, for attending the House this morning to respond to my commencement matter calling for a vacant property tax. And I call for a vacant property tax no more than anybody else. I don't like taxes. However, we have to accept that, and everybody does accept, the housing emergency that is gripping our state, the unprecedented funding and changes to housing policy that this government has made since taking office, and the glaringly obvious waste of built properties documented in the recent Central Statistics Office, the census. And I think anybody objectively would say that it is morally wrong to see such vacancy when there is such enormous housing need. In terms of the housing need, we recognise that there's more than 10,000 people homeless. There's more than 38,000 Ukrainians have arrived in our country since the start of the war, and there's more than 6,000 people living in direct provision. And none of those numbers capture the tens of thousands of people who are wanting to buy their own home or are stuck in inadequate accommodation. And it's right, and I commend you, Minister, and the Government for the commitment you've made, the €20 billion commitment under Housing for All to deliver 300,000 homes. The changes you've made in terms of using state-owned land to deliver social and affordable homes, using state-owned lands and making them really affordable, and empowering local authorities and housing charities to do that. The commitment from this government to end direct provision, the banning of co-living, the returning of power to the local authorities so that local authorities can reserve new developments for owner-occupiers, and the reinstatement of the Part 5 to ensure that there will be a minimum of 10% social and affordable each, 20% in total on every new private development. All of this is really welcome, including the protection for renters, the capping of rents, the increasing of the notice periods. All of that is really welcome. But, Minister, we're treading water. It's like we're on a sinking ship, bailing out as the water is coming in when you look at all of that vacancy. And, Minister, the CSO's number said that there's more than 160,000 vacant properties nationally. There's more than 30,000 of them in Dublin alone. And a lot of those properties, like every vacant property has its own, complex issues, its own mini drama going around with it, who owns it, what's the circumstances of ownership and all of that. But the reality of it is Housing for All has also included many financial supports under the Lease and Repair, the Buy and Renew, the Living City, and a lot more other supports to actually help property owners to restore them. And why are we doing that? We're doing it because the fastest and most sustainable way of increasing our housing stock is to reuse the buildings that are already built on the roads that have public lighting, that have storage, that have public transport, and they're near schools. And not only does it increase the housing stock and increase housing affordability, it actually reinvigorates and regenerates those communities. Now, Minister, I specifically asked for the Minister for Finance to come in here because I have raised this issue previously in this House, and I have raised it at the Joint Oireachtas Committee in Housing. And we did produce a report which calls for a vacant property tax. And the reason we specifically call for a vacant property tax is because there are taxes in place. And there's this debate goes on between dereliction and vacancy. But under either of the two charges, the state is failing miserably. So under the derelict sites tax, there was 300,000 collected, 300,000 euros. Sounds like a lot of money. Guess how much should have been collected? 5 million in 2020 alone. There's also another local authority tax for vacancy. And in 2020, the local authorities collected 21,000 out of a target of 21 million. That's less than 1%. Those levies are not being collected, they're not effective, they're not tackling the vacancy, and it is morally, economically, environmentally, socially wrong for that vacancy to be allowed to persist at a time of such huge housing emergency.
Thank you, Senator. Minister, you have 4 minutes to respond.
Thank you so much, Senator. Addressing vacancy and dereliction and maximising the use of the existing housing stock is a priority objective of the Government. Housing for All outlines a suite of measures aimed at addressing vacancy in a coordinated and robust manner, and specifically includes an action for the Department of Finance to collect data on vacancy with a view to introducing a vacant property tax. In considering the case for such a tax, it's important to have a sound understanding of the quantity, locations and characteristics of long-term vacant properties, and it's also essential to identify the reasons for vacancy and whether this is long or short-term in nature. There may be genuine and acceptable reasons for vacancy, such as refurbishment work, or temporary absence of the owner for medical reasons, or pending the grant of probate for a deceased person's estate. The Finance Local Property Tax Amendment Act 2021 enabled Revenue to collect certain information in relation to the occupancy status of residential properties in the local property tax return forms submitted by residential property owners in respect of the new LPT valuation period, which goes from 2022 to 2025. In relation to vacant properties, the LPT returns requested information such as whether a property is vacant, the reason for the vacancy, and whether the period of vacancy is 12 months or more. The return data provides a snapshot of vacant properties in Ireland as at the valuation date of the 1st of November 2021. Revenue have completed a preliminary analysis of the LPT returns received to date, which has been shared with the Department of Finance. The results of the preliminary analysis suggest that levels of vacancy are low across all counties. The revenue analysis provides a basis for the Department of Finance to assess the merits and impact of introducing a vacant property tax and how best such a tax might be designed. This work is underway at present. I will comment briefly on the recent publication of preliminary census data. According to the preliminary census data figures that were released 2 weeks ago, 166,752 vacant dwellings were recorded in census 2022, and that gives a rate of 7.8%. This is a decrease compared to 2016. It's an even further reduction of 12% compared to 2011, when 230,056 vacant dwellings were recorded. It's important to note that the CSO highlight that this is a point-in-time measure of vacancy relating to the weeks either side of census night. The figures are not intended to be a measure of long-term vacancy, nor do they suggest these properties are available for reuse. These homes may well have been occupied again a few weeks after census night. And indeed, in relation to the figures for Dublin mentioned by the Senator, it is relevant to note that of that vacancy figure of 30,000, 4,000 properties were up for sale, 5,000 were being renovated, 3,000 were vacant because the resident was in a hospital or care, another 3,000 were vacant because the resident was recently deceased, and lastly 1,000 were new builds awaiting their first occupation. The Minister for Finance is considering this issue in consultation with colleagues before reverting to Government with proposals on the appropriate response. I understand Revenue intends to publish a profile of the occupancy data from the LPT returns shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure whether the clock is... Oh, OK, we're back to zero again. You have a minute, Senator. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. And we all believe in reasonableness and fairness, and we can all accept that properties can be from time to time vacant. That's acceptable. Nobody has any argument with that. And in fact, the Joint Oireachtas Committee report states that reasonableness must be applied. However, Minister, and I welcome the fact that the Department has made progress. With the report, the Department of Finance has made progress on their summary. I'd urge them to publish that report as soon as possible, in fact, without any further delay. And I do take their point about the 30,000 properties in Dublin. What they're saying essentially is that there's explanations for 16,000 of the 30,000. That's fine, but that means there's 16,000 without explanation. That's 16,000 potential homes. That could house 30, 40, 50,000 people. We're in an emergency. And it is incumbent on the Department of Finance to publish the report as soon as possible and to bring forward recommendations. Gur Mágad.
Thank you. And Minister, you have the final minute to respond.
Thank you, Senator. And yes, the report will be published as soon as possible. And you do have a point that there are a significant number of vacant properties still in Dublin, and that the Department of Finance is preparing that, doing the groundwork for introducing a vacant property tax. But I want to say something about dereliction for a second, which is that I'm advised that the Department of Housing continues to liaise with local authorities on the implementation of the Derelict Sites Act. And this is with a view to improving its effectiveness. The Department initiated a review of the Derelict Sites Act in November 2021 to identify potential improvements with local authorities, and they're going to be engaging with local authorities on this matter in the course of the year. And just regarding a tax on vacant residential property, the Minister for Finance is considering this issue in consultation with colleagues and will revert to Government with proposals on the appropriate response. And Minister Donoghue will take the points that were raised by the Senator today on board when considering the matter. Thank you very much, Senator.